Hello, it's Phillip Taylor speaking from Richmond Green Chambers in London. Today I'm reviewing a book which has come to us from Informa Law. It's part of the Routledge group and Taylor Francis group. They are specialist publishers of certain types of very specialist book in the insurance field. We've reviewed a number over the years, probably the last 15 years or so. The actual Lloyd's shipping law library is a particularly specialist area, but it's a very important area of law. We'll look at the book in a minute. It's called Marine Cargo Insurance, second edition, published by, as I say, Informa, and it's been written by John Dunt. Now, Elizabeth and I have spoken, had a nice chat about this book to get some idea of what to write for the review. We've given our review title for this book, An Authoritative Work of Reference on Marine Cargo Insurance, now in an important new edition. Well, before we look at the review itself, let's look at the book. It's a heavy book, it's a hardback. It's actually green, this cover. You can see the title there, and then you can see the spine. There's nothing on the back. And then if we go to the back of the book first, it's just over 600 pages, and that's the index. The index is actually by paragraph numbering, so that's how you find what you're looking for. That's the index at the back, and it's a detailed index. Then you've got a very large number of appendices. For instance, that's a clause in a particular institute classification clause they're looking at there. Now, that's the series editor mentioned, Andrew W. Baker, Queen's Counsel. He's mentioned at the bottom there. And then you've got the list of what's in the law library there. A substantial number of books, some of which we have reviewed. They are very important contributions to the overall law of insurance, maritime insurance in particular. Now, it's an e-book as well. You can see the information there. The detail is there. And then there's a dedication, which I always mention, from the author. And then after that, this is the outline contents. Now, the index at the back is very detailed, so the index will probably be your first port of call, if I can use that expression, for marine cargo insurance. But there are, in fact, a total of 16 chapters. Then you've got a number of detailed appendices. You do, of course, have statutes clearly featuring, and a lot of other practical information, clauses. These are institute cargo clauses, then a whole range of other points, institute ancillary clauses and joint cargo committee clauses and so forth. Now we then move on from that to the detailed contents, which will also assist you depending on what you're looking for with the particular matter you're covering. I'm not going to go through any detail of the detailed contents. Then you've got the preface to the second edition. Always worth reading the preface to get an idea of what John Dunt has included. He dates it June 2015, so you've got, I'm recording this in February 2016, so it's 7-8 months later. And then you've got the abbreviations, which again I think are very important because it's so easy to make mistakes sometimes with some of the abbreviations. I would point out here that the abbreviations are quite useful because it mentions things like Clark and Linsell on torts, for instance. That's from the Common Law Library. Dicey, Morris and Collins likewise, and so forth. You've got a whole range of other cross-referred material all the way through. And then the table of cases. Quite a large number featured in total. And then after that, legislation, and then of course SIs after that. And then you've got institute and other clauses which are included as well. And then you get into the actual chapters. Now, see how they're structured. That's chapter 1. It's the introduction, history and definition of marine cargo insurance. The origins are obscure, it says, not as ancient as, for example, general average. Then you've got, after that, a lot of detail in the footnotes, which makes it a lot easier because you can read the main text without reference to the footnotes, which give you a lot more detail. With the main text, you can see its paragraph numbering. And this is for people not used to this book. You can see the paragraph numbering again. A little bit like the law reports themselves, but slightly different in some ways. And if, for instance, we've got open covers, policies and certificates of insurance. CIF is mentioned there, for instance. Then going into it in a bit more detail, all risks and exclusions, chapter 8. There we go. And then moving on, duration of insurance, the transit clause, and so forth, all the way through. And then you've got the appendix, which is here the Insurance Act 2015 mentioned, leading piece of legislation, and so on. Heavy book with number of pages, 600, just over 600 odd. There we are. An excellent addition to your firm's law library if you're involved in this area of law. These books are not cheap, by the way, either, but they are, of course, the authoritative word. This is where you're going to find the law, if that is what you're requiring, depending on any form of difference of opinion you might have, or issues of between parties, for instance, in any dispute. So at least you've got some idea of where to find the law within the structure. This is what we say about the book. This is the second and the latest edition of Marine Cargo Insurance, which has established a well-deserved reputation for rigorous scholarship, accuracy and clarity. Recently published by Informa Law from Routledge, as I said, part of the Taylor and Francis group. It's part of the Lloyd Shipping Law Library, which is quite extensive actually now and will be known to many of you. And it reflects what author John Dunt refers to as a sea change, useful words here, that has taken place in the law of marine insurance since the first edition of the book was published in 2009. The said sea change has come about in the spirit of reform, which the author cites as long overdue and which is represented primarily in the Insurance Act 2015 to be introduced from August 2016. Now, as I record this, February 2016 hasn't yet come in, but we're looking forward with holding our breath as to what is going to happen later in the year. And there it is, of course, for your perusal. That's the Insurance Act 2015, set out in the appendices under legislation, which is the first part, together with, of course, other legislation which is relevant to this subject. Basically, in the author's words, the Act, 2015 Act, serves to limit the effectiveness of terms of insurance contracts, including warranties, where any breach is not relevant to the actual loss. Part 2 of the Act deals with, for example, the duty of the presentation and remedies for breach. Parts 3, 4 and 5 cover warranties, fraudulent claims, good faith and contracting out. And Part 6 contains amendments to previous legislation, including power to change meanings of relevant person for the purposes of the 2010 Rights Against Insurers Act. And the final part deals with general issues, including insurers' remedies for qualifying breaches. In addition to this significant new piece of legislation, a large number of other notable changes have been incorporated in this book, much of which, as the author reveals, has had to be rewritten for the second edition. As you by now have inferred then, this book is definitely required reading for lawyers specialising in marine insurance law. It covers, we would say, every conceivable aspect of this often complex and surprisingly abstruse subject. Within its more than 600 pages, you'll find detailed and informed commentary on, and these are only a few examples, law and jurisdiction clauses, insurable interest and the indemnity principle, risks and exclusions, claims and losses, subrogation, and of course much more. The chapter on war, strikes, terrorism and rejection risks is particularly pertinent and timely in 2016. So for lawyers and non-lawyers alike, or indeed anybody in the insurance industry, the historical overview of the subject in the first chapter attests to its vulnerability, or rather venerability, and in fact the dire necessity for marine insurance as a protection for marine commerce against a wide spectrum of perils and risks. As far as is known, says the author, the earliest form of marine cargo policy was prescribed by a Florentine ordinance in 1523, with London developing as a maritime insurance centre during the reign of Elizabeth I. And it was in response at that time to the expansion of markets and trade that marine insurance was first regulated by Parliament in 1601. So it's got a pretty long history to it. The development of Lloyd's can be traced back to approximately 1689. Then as now, of course, it was possible for a big business idea to begin life in a small London coffee house. And I say that with a smile on my face. I'm just conjuring it up. Let me conclude by saying this, that as marine insurance is indeed big business, this authoritative text on marine insurance law, which by the way is clearly written and logically organised for ease of use, should be in every shipping practitioner's professional library. And it's not difficult actually to read. The tip being don't get bogged down with the footnotes. You can read the main text through. You obviously have to have some idea of what you're looking for. It's an area, having studied it myself for the bar exams, it's an area that is actually at the beginning quite complex, but it actually things fall into place quite quickly. This is a wonderful addition to the Shipping Law Library, so thank you to all concerned. As I've indicated earlier, the publication date is cited at June 2015. Here's the book again. It's the front, the spine, there's nothing on the back as such. And then if we open it up right in the middle, duration of the insurance, Chapter 2, termination, change of voyage. Change of voyage clause. So the clauses have it, if I can put it that way. You can see again the structure. You've got the footnotes there and you've got the footnotes there. Requirements of the clause. It's really all about words and making sure you've covered your back, if I can put it that way, in its very, very simplest terms. The preface to the second edition, again, is well worth reading because clearly the new Act of Parliament, the Insurance Act 2015, is going to make a lot of changes. The provisions, of course, are going to be coming in and we will see what happens. Just to remind you about the front of the book, that's actually the shipping library itself. Thank you anyway to Informa, Routledge, Taylor Francis, Erin Francis and all the people involved in this book. We can't do our work without having these excellent books available to us as practitioners and advisors and as members of the judiciary. So thank you very much to all concerned, and we are indebted to you, especially for producing something like this at a time of big change with the new legislation just about to come on board. So bye-bye for now. Bye.